So any questions so far about project ideas or Flutter? Oh, sorry, I haven't shared my screen yet. All right, so from today, let's just slowly get started on all the Flutter development. I think we'll try to go a little bit slowly in the beginning, the first half of the course, maybe the second half of the course once you feel more familiar with all the syntax, libraries, and development cycles, and then we can speed up with more examples, okay? And same time, to be honest, I'm also trying to learn some of these best practices. I know the basic development, but I can't tell you too many best practices, so we'll see. So we'll just learn all of this together, okay? So this is the demo app we opened last week, okay? This is a sample app provided by Flutter development framework. So let me try to run this again. And as always, I will just use this emulator, which is really fast and easy to launch. From there, I can just try to run this program one more time. And also, as always, the first time you run the app, it will take quite a while, okay? So, but I think we already built this app before, so it shouldn't be that bad. So let's see. But then no matter what, this is the actual app after you build and run. It has one screen only, a little title on the bar. There's a label or text, another label or text. There's a floating button, and then you click on the button. It's going to increase the number. Okay, so for some reason I can't click. Oh, right now it works. A little bit slow. All right, so that's what the sample app does. All right. I really like this sample app because it actually gives you a very good code base for you to reuse and to try and play around different things, okay? So the first thing we want to do today is to go through this code base and to see what are the things we can learn from this, okay? So the really nice thing about whole Flutter is it has a lot less different type of files and the configuration files compared with Android or iOS. For example, everything actually is in the Dart file, UI, and also the logic. And not like Android, you had to use XML for the layout file for the UI, and then go back to Java or Kotlin for the actual coding and the logic part. But Dart, you have everything here, so it's very clean. As I told you, these folders, you rarely touch them. It's generated automatically. You only need to touch the CM file when you need to add dependencies or you add some asset files. That's it. So primarily two type of files you're gonna work on. All right. So let's actually look at more about this Dart file. Next week we're gonna spend one lecture probably to go through some of the syntax about Dart. I did find a very good tutorial. You can also find it from Google. Talk about the key differences, key feature about Dart. If you have a decent Java background, you can find it really easy to change and switch to Dart. Even if you don't program Java, if you have C++ experience, it's also really, really easy. And if you only program Python, which I don't think that's our common case here, if you do a lot of class, then don't worry about it. It's very easy. But if you never do then anything on classes or inheritance, then you probably want to review and learn some of those concepts. So we'll talk about that next time, but not today. Okay, let's look at the key structure of the Dart, this main Dart file, okay? So I want to tell you that in this file, and that's the only file you have for this app, so this file basically does everything you see here in this sample app, right? So the app already launched, so it come back to 0. Again, you click on a button, and then you can increase the number, right? So my computer is really slow because I'm also recording the screen. Okay, so it works. All right, so let's actually go through this file here. I want to highlight some of the things you really need to learn from the template. Okay, in my opinion, this file has 3 major components. Okay, the first part is this line here, right here. Okay, this void main and then run the app. Okay, without learning Dart, without learning any syntax, just by reading this line, you should be able to figure out, well, should be the entrance to this whole application. When you see the main method, it basically reminds you about the main C or C++ or main Java, right? So same idea. And really the nice thing about Dart, when I was looking at a tutorial last time was, in Java, the main method had to sit inside one of the classes, right? Public stack void main. It must be in one of the classes. However, Dart changed that because in many cases it doesn't make sense. The main method just serves as a way for you to launch the application. So Dart make it independent. So you don't put main method inside the class. Instead, it's just outside. That's why this method just sits standalone outside of a class, just like this. It's much more straightforward. So that's why all the newer languages are always better than the older languages, because they saw the problems and disadvantage about older language, and then they try to improve it. So that's what the Dart is. And then when you look at a lot of features from the Dart, you can see clearly it's more efficient and easier to use than Java. Okay, so that's one of them. So this is your entrance of your application. I really don't see any motivation right now to change it. That means whenever you have your app to start with, you probably need to have this line of code. How would you start the class? Yes, because think about the mobile application, you always start with one screen. So that's why we're going to look at this one. So your app always has one entry point. You launch one screen. From one screen, then you go to the next screen. And that transition is controlled by a different. But for your application, always have one. And same for Android, same for iOS. You always have one entry. Okay. All right, so that's the first thing you need to know. Okay, this one line looks like it's a little bit weird because now it doesn't sit in the class, but that's how Dart works. All right. So after this, which go to our second component. Okay, there's a class called My App. All right, looks like a very high level entity for the application. And then it's extend this parent class. It's called stylus widget. All right, it looks like something about a widget. Looks like something about a UI. And also, you must be very familiar with inheritance, okay, which I think you should already know from Java. I don't know how many of you took object-oriented design. This is a very important concept, okay, inheritance. This is, as long as it's Java or Java, like this language is similar to Java, the inheritance is such an important feature. It's a core feature from object-oriented programming language. If you don't use inheritance, I told you many times, you're not really an object-oriented developer. Okay, so if every day you're just writing a script, you don't use inheritance interface at all, you're not a professional object-oriented developer, even though you may use Java or C++, but you don't need that. Okay, so anyway, this one here, we're not going to be able to review this too much. Okay, if you know nothing about inheritance, you really need to go back to look at what inheritance is from Java or C++. Okay, but basically the idea is if you start to extend this parent class, that means you are borrowing a lot of things from this parent class. In a more technical term, you are reusing a lot of things from the parent class. Okay, now if you ever done the Android development, so this is exactly the same thing. Okay, now let me tell you what happened here. So look at this. Let's first count how many lines we have for this whole application. Okay, if this class here, if you look at this class, only one method, and then this method had this title, scene, home, 5 lines of code. And then after that, you see here, this class has 5 or 6 lines of code. Finally, this is the larger the class, which probably if you just estimate it, especially this part, let's look at this part here, about 5, another 5 or 15, 20, like 20, 30 lines of code. Total file together, I think is about 40 to 50, maybe around 50 lines of code. Now, 50 lines of code, you actually can have this full functional screen that has all the interactions, the UI, everything. Okay, so that's not a lot of the code. If you ever done, for example, Java Swing, think about if you try to write the whole thing in Java Swing, how many lines of code you need to write. Or I don't know, have anyone done the UI design using C++ or C? Okay, you probably need to do more work. So this is the typical kind of a modern type of approach to build your application, because a lot of these UIs are similar, right? So every app will have buttons, every app will have titles, the bars, the transitions, invent, click, touch, all of this, right? So the developers who made all this development framework, they will not expect you to write every single line of code from scratch. So they're going to give you a ton of code base, or we call it frameworks, for you to reuse. So you only need to customize the different type of things you want to develop. For example, I'm going to give you this whole UI at the screen, but you have the freedom to choose. You want to do a button, label, or what kind of event and what happened afterwards. But you don't need to worry about how do we launch this screen and how do we handle the transition. Do I need to program those animations for the transition? These kind of things are taken care of by framework. Then the question is, okay, where do we see the framework? So the answer is the framework sits in a lot of these classes you extend. That's why when you start to make screen, you don't make your own separate class called My First Screen. You always have to extend something, okay? Because that's where you can borrow all the code from the framework to make your life much easier. Okay, it's about code reuse. However, now if you ask me what the status widget is, I actually don't know. I remember I look at that, I can't remember it, okay? So these are the things I told you on day one. When you look at the code for right now in the coming 2 or 3 weeks, just don't expect to understand 100% on all the technical details. I guarantee now if you Google this term, you look at documentation, you still can't get it, okay? Let's not worry about it, okay? Let's focus on the core things in the first few weeks, which is the UI. And now you know how to do UI. Later on, let's actually try to understand more about this concept. Because if you spend all your time here, it's really, really boring. Okay, and also you just can't get it 100% unless you're super professional, have done a lot of different kind of mobile development before. Okay, let's not worry about it right now. So anyway, my app is just the first app class you're going to use from this application. As you can see, this run app method here create this my app instance. Okay, so that's why this class will be called and used first. So let's see what happened here. This class has only one method, which is called a build. Okay, again, it's kind of a self-explaining. They try to build your app. And then let's just look at what's happening here. There is a return method, statement, trying to return something. Okay, very simple. It doesn't do all this complicated algorithm just to return something. Let's see what's being returned. It's called a material app. Okay, so you probably heard about material design. Okay, material design is a design style and pattern proposed by Google. So what you're seeing right now here is called material design. So you could actually go to the website, just Google material design from Google, and then it's going to tell you the recommended patterns, design principles, and some of the widgets you can use for all this application. So it's a set of rules and best practices defined by Google. I don't think Apple supports that, but because Flutter is from Google, so that's what they use. All right. So they return a material app. That means this app follows the material design. Okay, we can just understand that way. And then you got a little bit attributes. Okay, look at the format here. This is not really JSON. Okay, JSON you have to have a double colon, but it's similar to JSON. But you see the reason why they don't use JSON, because this is actually more concise and easier to write than JSON. Because JSON you always need to do the double quote, single quote, and then all of the codes make your code a little bit messy sometimes, right? Then they totally get rid of the code. So this is not JSON, but pretty much works just like JSON. Okay, and then you have this attribute name as a key. On the right hand side, you got a value. So this one here said title Flutter demo, basic the title of the app. And then here there's theme. Whenever you see theme, you probably know it's something about the UI, right? So this UI had this theme, and now I'm going to adapt that one across for all my screen. So there's the theme data. We don't know what that is, but something about the theme. And then inside here, there's something called a primary swatch, and then color. Okay. And then you can actually look at a little bit comments, but if you see this one, looks like it's something about the color, right? So right now we're using blue, and that actually makes a lot of sense because the screen here is actually blue, right? So that's the theme, and after they got a home, all right? A home probably meaning something about the home of your app, maybe a home screen, that makes more sense. So as you can see on the right-hand side, you have this My Home page, and then title, Flutter Demo Home page, all right? So what is my home page? And then you scroll down a little bit. That's our next class. Okay. So anyway, from this little app here, you can feel that this app basically does the configuration for the whole app. It's not for a specific screen because it handles the title of the app, it handles the theme. And the theme normally applies to the whole application. You don't use multiple themes. You always stick to one theme so that your UI keeps consistent. And also the color stuff. Now this is also very important. This one specifies which screen you go first. What is your home screen? What is your first screen? And then it's something called my home page. So that brings the next component, right? So for now, I just want you to know that this class here called my app is probably the high level entry point to your application that does a lot of configuration. But this app doesn't configure your UI, your first screen. Your first screen is specified here in this my home page class. Okay, so that's how it works. All right, so let's keep looking. Okay, then after this, you got this my home page class. Okay, now by looking at the size of the class, you should feel very comfortable because as you can see, this class only had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 lines of code. You know, when you see this size, it's less intimidating. So that's why in 40 class we told you, anytime if you're asking what would be the ideal number line of code for my class, for my method, the answer is always the shorter the better. Because the shorter is easier to understand, the shorter developers feel less intimidating, less detail you need to catch, right? So look at this one. The first one, okay, has this key and title. Let's not worry about what the key is, but the title probably something about the title of your screen or app. And then this one, there is the attribute defined inside the class called title. So this one maps with this one. Next time we'll talk about this is how you write a constructor, okay? The nice thing about Dart is you don't have to do this dot title equals to title, this dot number equals to number. You only need to define the constructor, as long as you make sure the name is the same, it will do it for you. So that's another cool thing about Dart. It tries to simplify Java to make sure you write less code and make your code less verbose. So that's the definition, constructor, and only one method, which is called a create state. Okay, this is the typical kind of a lambda expression. We can talk a little bit more about this one next time. You probably already seen this in different places. It's basically just like a return, right? So it returns the result of this. Okay, what is that? When you click on this one in the Android Studio, it highlights this one here, help you to find, well, this is actually a class. Okay, again, next time we'll talk about in Dart, you don't have to do new class name. You can just write class name. It just works like you do this one. You can still do this, okay? But you can ignore the new keyword. That's also a special thing about Dart, okay? But it's basically create an instance and return that as a return type, which makes sense, right? So because this method, the return type is page state, and you are creating the instance and return it. So this class really doesn't do anything. If you look at the code, it just passes the title and then creates its state, all right? So that kind of brings you to read more about what is a page state. So let's keep going. And then you start realizing, wow, this page state actually does most of the things about this app, which is true, right? So let's look at what is the home page state. So home page state extends another state. Again, let's not worry about what this is, but this state has a kind of a generic parameter, which is about a type. And it looks like this is trying to control the state for this home page. As you can see, these things are all mapped, pretty easy to understand. But again, let's ignore, don't ask me right now, what is the state? What does this thing do? What does this thing do? And why this page had to have a state? I can explain that. But this is what a sample app does. You could actually just follow that to keep going for now. Okay, so let's ignore these details because these are not really related with building your actual user experience and UI. Okay, so let's see what the state does. Counter definition in type, pretty easy to understand. There's a method called increment counter. If you look at the code, it's really easy to understand. It just increases the counter by 1. The only difference is there is the set state, so which we'll talk about later. But it does this simple job to increase the counter. That's probably what we do. What you can do here when you click on the button, it increases the counter. That's what happens. All right. So the most important method is again something called a build, and it returns the widget. And you're going to see this a lot. I think in the beginning, the first 2 or 3 weeks, you're going to touch this method a lot. So basically, if you look at the return from this method, again, this is one line of code, just returns something. It doesn't do algorithm, it doesn't do logic, it just returns something. And then if you read this whole part here, you start to realize it basically returns that UI layout and all the widget stuff. So this method basically controls your UI for this particular page, which means the particular screen, okay? So let's read this one. First of all, scaffold, no idea what that is. You can look at the comment here. or Google it. I guess it's something about UI, so I'm going to ignore it. Again, even today now, I don't know what Struct40 is. It's probably some kind of UI stuff, okay? But it doesn't matter because later on, these attributes are so straightforward and self-explaining because the first one is the app bar, easy, okay? That's the app bar is basically this one here. That's why you have this. And then you're wondering, oh, why this one shows Flutter demo for homepage? Well, let's take a look at that. The app bar has this title. Title has a text. Text come from this title. Where did the title come from? The title actually comes from here, from this attribute. And where did that value come from? So this value comes from here. So that's why this thing has been passed to this class through its constructor. And then this value has been used actually by this class. And then that's how the title can be specified. We're going to play around with this and then try to change it. You will see how it's got to change. After that, you go to body. And when you see body keyword, it reminds you about the HTML pages, right? HTML, everything, the major content specified in the body tag. So body has a center, okay? Again, you can Google a little bit because probably something about center the elements, put them all in the center layout, something about layout. And then the center has a child, okay? Just meaning this body has a child. And then what is a child? The child is a column. And then again, it's probably something about the layout, about putting things into a column somehow. But then later on, you will know that the column means that you want to put all the elements as one by one vertically. So for those of you who have done Android development, this is similar to the linear layout. Okay, if you use the vertical linear layout, that basically does the same thing. So that's called column. So let's keep going. There's an attribute called a main axis alignment. And here alignment center. So this is something about alignment center. Again, some kind of a layout configuration. After that, there's the children. Since it's called children, that means there are multiple elements included. So if you look at the right-hand side, it makes sense because there is a list. Okay, you have a brackets, you have multiple elements. That's why we have a children here contained. And then what are the children? We have a text, and then you have this little string here. You have pushed this button this many times. That corresponded to this one. And then next one, you have another text. So it's the next line. And then you have this variable called counter. And that's why you're going to see this little number here. And then you also have a style. And then style basically specify how you want to change the look of the text. That's why this number here is different from this one, the UI. Because this second text applies the style where the first one doesn't apply. And that's it. So all the children are included here. And then that's what the center does, okay, for this whole big block. After that, you got this floating action button, okay? So that's basically the button right here. That's why it's called a floating button. I think this also come from material design. So if you decide to use material design, you have a chance to do a floating action button on the right bottom corner. Okay, that's specific to material design. And then for that position, you are placing a floating action button. And for that button, you got something called unpressed. Tooltip. This one is easy to understand. This one just tell you, I don't know if you can see anything here. Yeah, so if you click on that, press, long press, you can see this tooltip increment. And then the child is an icon because this button here, there's a little icon, the plus icon here. That's why it's specified here. But the most important part about this function is when you click on that, it changes the number. And now you see this thing called unpress. Basically means what they're gonna do if you press this button. And very easy to understand, it does this thing called increment counter. And then you should remember, it's one of the methods here. So if you look at the method, all right, so this one is called every time you press the button, and then it just does one thing to increase that counter, increase that value by 1. And then this is just a variable, but how the UI can be changed. And then you go back to look at this little text here, okay? And you can find the variable has been embedded into this text. And use some kind of a dollar sign, that's probably how the magic happens. So that's how they link the content of data with the UI component. So if you ever change the value of the counter, and the UI will be updated automatically, okay? So if you actually try to read this code carefully, just like what I did here, a lot of things make sense, okay? I would suggest that you follow this kind of a template and try to learn and make by modifying it, by extending it, rather than go back to the very beginning to dig into what is stateful widget, what is the key, all of this. That's a very, in my opinion, is a very inefficient way of learning, and also it's less motivating because you will stuck there. You won't get what that is. Okay, so that's just start to modify things, make things you want, and then just try to move slowly. That way you will be more motivated to to finish it. All right. So that's kind of a quick go through. Okay, to summarize, 3 components. Number 1, your main method at the entry point. Number 2, your high-level app configuration. Number 3, you have a screen, but this screen has 2 classes. Okay, a top class right here doesn't do much, and then the state class that does most of the work, UI and a little bit of logic. All right, so let's start to make some changes. All right, so we already have this app right here, and you can test your idea and verify your ideas. First one, there is a title. Okay, Flutter demo. I actually don't know what it is. Maybe it's a title when it shows on the actual app screen. So let's change it to see what happens. So instead of a Flutter demo, we're gonna do CS 4049.90 demo. Okay, app demo. Title, let's change it. Flutter demo home page. So again, CS 499, and then for first app home page. It's too long. I'll just do home. All right. So let's make these 2 changes and then rerun the app. Okay. So we run the app. Obviously, you can just click on this button again. But this is going to basically reload everything, rebuild everything. It's not complete rebuild, but it's going to build a lot of things again, which takes longer. Now, always you should try this little lightning icon, which is called hot load, right? So this is very powerful. Okay, so what it does is try to load this really quickly. So let me show you. Okay, so if you go here, if I do this hot load, all right, it's done. All right, so I don't know if you can see that. So you see my title got changed. 1 click, it's done. All right, so that is actually a very cool feature. You actually start to see that in Android. Maybe I think when I was teaching the Android back in 2018, you start to have this little feature. I forgot what it's called. Well, it's not called hot load. It's called I forgot the name, but it doesn't work that well. Sometimes it works, sometimes not. Or sometimes you do the UI changes only, it works, sometimes not. But the Flutter works really well. Okay, that's also probably part of the reason why they use Dart. Okay, I can't explain from the programming language point of view, but part of the reason they use Dart is to make this feature easier to show. This feature works for both Android and also iOS. But just one reminder is that you cannot really totally trust this one 100%. Okay, so it works for most of the cases, especially for UI changes, some of the simple script changes. But sometimes my experience is when you add dependencies, when you modify some of the events, for example, starting screen, ending screen, that button doesn't trigger. Okay, so sometimes you might think your code doesn't work, but maybe the reason is you probably have to rerun the app by this screen button. Just keep that in mind. Okay, sometimes it doesn't work, just go back to try to rerun your app again to see if that fixes it. Okay, so but it's not 100% reliable, but it's reliable enough for you to always try that first. All right, so that's how you can change the app. As you can see, I modified this title here because this title has been passed to the first screen, which is called the first page. This title has been used in my title app bar here. Okay, that's how the things got connected, right? I also changed the app name. I actually don't know it. Maybe the app name is right here, or not, right? So it's not. So I think the app is still something called a Flutter app. _ app. I actually don't know what that title is used for, but we'll look at that and find it later. Okay, so that's okay. So that's not the app we have. So which one? It's all like named the same thing, or this one actually, app 7. Yeah, that's one. All right. So let's actually make a little bit more changes. Okay, so right here, this class, this class doesn't. You don't need to change anything. It's really simple, just a passive title. And then this one here has a lot of things, as you can see, some of the UI layout stuff, okay? So right here, that the text, you have pushed the button this many times. I'm gonna change that you have clicked the button this many times, okay? One more time, I'm gonna go back, hot load. and come back here, and you can see you have clicked the button this many times. All right. Another thing you can try, like this one here called style. Okay, I didn't use style right here, but if you want to apply that style from here also to here, and then try to load it again. All right, so that text also had the size and you know the kind of style. It doesn't look very good. Let's just delete it. Then come back, rerun it, and then it comes back. This one here, text, and right now it just shows the counter. But if you want to say this one plus maybe, I don't know how it works. Okay, the times, something like this. So if I rerun this, all right, so that gave you a little bit extra changes. Just play around with it and then see how things are put together. And then you might say, oh, let me try to add another text. So let's try to do it. Text. Just follow the same kind of style. And then CS490 demo. Reload it. And then you got another text here. Okay. And then this one probably deserves a bigger title. So I'm going to copy this style over. All right. And then reload it. And then you got it done. Right. Pretty simple. Just let you to feel that UI is also done by this kind of a code here in Dart. It's very similar. If you ever done React development, it's very similar to React, or it's kind of similar to HTML. The difference, this one doesn't use tag. It's more concise. When you use a tag, you always have this closing tag and all the, you know, slash, all of these characters. Okay. All right. So that's how the UI works. And then right here, you got this floating action button here. Nothing really to modify this one. It's a little tooltip. You can change the string. Icon, you could maybe try a different icon instead of add. Let's see what else we have. We have alarm, something like this. Let's see what that looks like if I change this one, refresh. And that's a little alarm icon, not the icon anymore, right? So very, very easy to understand. Finally, you have this increment counter method, right? This method goes here. It actually increase this by 1, and if you want to do, you know, by 10, all right, I guess that's going to work pretty easily. So if you refresh, go back here, I click on the button again, it's going to be 20, 30 every time by 10, not by 1 anymore. So that kind of explains everything, how things are put together. Okay. Obviously, there's a very important thing about the state. That's how the UI and the data can be automatically connect, link, or synchronize. They basically use this kind of state mechanism. Okay, very easy. Basically, whatever you want to change for UI immediately, you put that set state method, you're going to do that. So we'll talk more about that next time. All right. So that's kind of a quick go through of this application. All right. Any questions so far? All right. So a few other things I want to remind you, okay, as you do the development. So first one is about the logs, about you know, logging and print. So for this one, for the Flutter, okay, you actually have to look at two things. The most important thing is probably something here in the Run tab here. If you use Android Studio, I don't know about Visual Studio. Android Studio, I think this is the major part you have to look at. Another thing is the Logcat. So Logcat is a logging mechanism for Android. So if you are running the application in the Android emulator, just like what I'm doing right now, this one is also very, very important because a lot of the logs will also show up here. So how do we see the logs? And first of all, how do we print something? So I think I haven't looked at the best practice. So if you correct me if you know better approach. I know you can do print. Okay, so for example, I'm going to do here. All right, counter increased by 10. All right, so since it's the mobile app, you can't expect to see that message on your mobile screen, but it will go to your log, go to your console. Okay, so let's try this. I'm gonna refresh my app, go back here, I click on a button. Did you see my log here shows up? Okay, so that's why I told you this Run tab here, this is your Flutter log. And you should always look at that first. A lot of errors will show up here first. Occasionally, you also need to dig into the Android log or iOS log, but that will come from here. I don't know if you can see the same thing, probably not, right? So let me actually check. Yeah, you can see the same thing here because the inventory is generated there. So if I go here, I do this one here, and you can see the logs pop up. All right. If you want to debug, this is the right approach. You print things just like in Java, you do system out, same idea. You always need to use print. Okay, you can't place things on screen. That's to take forever. Okay, you can't just create a label and show that. It's not needed. So always print things in the console, and you can watch those information from the console. All right, so that's how you do the logging. I'm sure there are more techniques about the logging because in Android, for example, you can specify the level of the logs, specify the tags and keyword. Flutter, I'm pretty sure there are similar ways. I just haven't learned that yet. So I guess there may be a logging library. So we can look at that later. But for now, if you just want to display something, just to do something like this, okay? So I forgot if this one worked. It's actually not because you can't do the automatically custom the type. So you basically have to turn this into a string. Okay, I think it's this. No, okay, so how do I turn that into a string? It is string. No, to string. All right, so Dart int to string. To string method. Okay, just like this. So that's how they do it. All right, so if you do this, and then try to refresh this again, and go back to here. Sorry, so if you look at this one, you click on this one this time, it's actually show you the actual number. Why this number is so big? Oh yeah, that's right. So yeah, that's how this kind of things work. So all the syntax again, just Google it. Dart is relatively simple language. You don't have to learn all the language first and then try to use that. Okay, just always Google and search. Okay, so that's the thing you can learn from the very first app. Okay, the next what I want to show you is I believe this template is very valuable because you can pretty much reuse a lot of these things every time rather than writing everything from scratch by yourself. I bet now if I ask you to write this class and remember all the name, nobody can do that, okay? But the truth is you don't have to do that. So this is what I would do. So let me create a new file here. I call it Dart. So all the files go to the library folder. You can create subfolders, that's fine, but it's always a Dart file. Okay, I'm gonna call this one as screen. Okay, just to know that this is how you can make other screens. Some of you ask, okay, how do I make multiple screens? How does it work? Let's try that, very simple. All right, so I told you this should be only exist in the main Dart file, only one line. You don't need to make the second main method. This one sounds like a very high level configuration for the whole application. So you also don't need to go to this. But this part here, obviously, is specific to one screen. So if you ever want to make a screen, you probably want to need this. Okay, so I'm going to copy this two part here. Okay, I will copy this. I'll put it to this file here. Okay. Once I place in here, okay, so a lot of errors. And then when you look at this, okay, so probably you get it. So I don't have the reference. And I haven't, brought the code yet, so the Dart doesn't know anything. So if you compare with the first class, and this one is the answer, because you're actually importing some kind of base library. In this case, it's a material design or material library. So let's copy this one over. That way you can also learn Dart use the similar import system as Java. Okay, so I go to here, I place the import, and that clears all my errors. So this code basically the same as the first screen, but you can't have the same name for the two different classes, right? So let's change it. So I'm going to call this one. Assume I'm going to make this in the second screen. Okay, so let's just modify this. Okay, to make your second screen. So I'm going to call this my next page. All right. The moment I change this one, you start to see, okay, your constructor got to be changed because constructor name had to be the same as the class name. So that's Java. All right, so here is the error. The error is we try to create a state and then which returns the my home page state. You have this class, but we need to modify the name. But it's still wrong because the reason is here. Because this class, even though it has a name, but this type here is wrong because this one says that I want to inherit this state for specifically the type of my home page. But I already changed it to my next page. So I got to change this one. So this one should be called my next page. Once this one is fixed, so the error is gone. But I don't want to name this the same thing, so I don't want to call my home page. I will call it my next page. All right. So from here, this one is a new state class, so I can use that one for here and for here. I'm just refactoring everything into a different name because this is a different screen, right? And then you got this whole thing here. All right. So same thing. So let me also make sure it's different, so I can change some of the text here. Next page, so that I know this is the next page. All right. So now I have my second page built. Same time, I would recommend you just delete these comments because they're all the same. Let's get a very concise version. If you want to read those comments, go to the first app, first screen. These comments are pretty good. Okay, it explains most of the things you want to know about those. Another thing about this, trailing slash this kind of comments. If you remember in 480, one of the clean code principle told you actually this is a bad practice. But one thing to keep in mind, my explanation is that book was specifically for Java. Okay, for Java you don't really need to do that. But this one for Dart, it is pretty kind of messy sometimes when you write a lot of this, for instance, as you can see like this case. So that's why Dart, actually the compiler automatically generates this trailing comment. So you can't delete it. So it's always there just to help you to mark and see which one is aligned. Okay, so just for your convenience. All right, so I delete all the comments. As you can see, that's what you need to make another screen. All right. So we got a two screen right now, but when you run the app right now, you are still in the first screen and then clicking the button does the same thing. So the question is, how do I get to the second screen? All right, so that's something pretty important because most of your app probably will have more than one screen, so you need to know how to do the transition. In Flutter, it's called navigation. Okay, so there are a lot of different ways to navigate apps. Okay, again, right now, I do not know the best practice for different situations. You can find some of the simple answers in Google. Okay, so let's try that. So if I go Flutter, open a new page, okay, screen. All right, so something like this. Any kind of your words, this kind of simple question you should be able to find pretty quickly. Okay, so look at this and then read a little bit. Create these two routes here, and you can see the first one. And there's a build. It looks like this is the same as our first screen. And then there's on-press. And then you got a second route. They use a route basically second screen. Another screen here, all of this. And navigate to the second one from using this navigator push. Look at the code. All right, so on press, if you press, I'm gonna do the navigator dot push context and the material page route, all of this, go to the next one. All right, so looks like that line actually does the work. So let's try it. Okay, so I'm gonna copy this. All right, and then I go back here. So what I can do this time is this. So I can say that, okay, right now on press, okay, when this little part here specify what happened if you press this button. Right now it called this function to increase the counter. And now I can change it to, for example, go to the next screen. So I can try that. So for example, I can follow exactly the same style. No, actually it's probably easier to do it right here. So I'll just do this. So instead of calling this method, I can just create a block of the code just like this, right? And then to do the navigation. So I can try. Actually no. So we're missing a parenthesis. So the syntax here. Okay. So we'll go through some of the syntax next time. But it's a kind of a simplified form for the block function. All right. So I'm going to copy this line of code. Navigator.push, and then there's a context. Let's not worry about what the context is. Basically means the current context. So it's probably talking about the current screen UI, all the widgets, the things you can access. So you push this material page route and the builder context, everything. And then this one here, if you look at our example, the second route means the second screen right here. Okay. So in my case, mine is not called second route. Mine is called, if you look at the class name, okay, not the file name. It's called my text page. So I'm going to replace this one with my next page. All right, but it still gave me an error. The reason is we don't have the access to the reference. We don't know what the my next page is. So that means you have to re-import. So go back, import, okay? Just use auto generation first. And then basically looks like I want to import this little Dart file, right? So I'm going to start a type screen and then recognize that, and now I'll do that. And so I import the other file. So it looks like in Dart, even in the same folder, you have to import it, okay? So you do this one here, and this error is gone. All right, so then I'm going to rerun my app. This time I'm going to click on this button. All right, something's wrong. All right, so that's okay. Let's actually take a look at what happens. All right, so totally unexpected, but now I know what error is. So let's try to read this. Okay, this one here said the package failed assertion. This line here, data doesn't equal to null. All of this doesn't make much sense. But then if we go here, let's see if we can get a better idea. So if we click on this, that's this line here, okay? Let's see others, okay? So just like Java, it's gonna go through a lot of this. This one is not our code, right? So it says this one here is wrong. That means that, you know, there's some kind of a string is null, okay? Because it shouldn't be null, but still we don't know what's going on. But if you go here, let's see. All right, so this one actually locate to this line of code. This is our code, screen.dart. So it actually says about this text here. And this one use a title, okay? Now you start to get a little bit idea, okay? And then I have this error before, so I know what's going on, but the first time it's not gonna be that fast. So you probably need to Google some of the error messages, and then gradually you will figure it out. But you know, it looks like it's actually complaining this one is some kind of a null. And you're gonna look at what is the title. The title is something from here and from here. And then you start to realize, oh, actually, we did not provide the title. That's why that title is null, which is not accepted. So basically, since you are trying to, you told Flutter to use this text for a title, but you give me a null, that's not accepted, right? So we need to pass that title. And if you can't remember how to do that, and you basically just look at the other part here. That's how we can create a new home screen here from a page. So you pass the title with a parameter just like this. So we can do the same thing and go here, title. Okay, so my next page. All right, and let's run this one more time. So this time, I guess it's because you are already in this wrong state. You can't really hot load this one. So to be safe, I'm going to just rerun this one more time. Next question. Looks like not. So it looks like the navigator come from the material library. So we can actually find out which one it depends on. Okay, let's first try this one. Click on the button. All right, so let's go to my next screen. All right, pretty straightforward. Even with this simple lesson, you can actually start to kind of, you know, if you already have a design for your app, all the screens, you can pretty much put all the screens together, okay? So yeah, so that was a great question. So this navigator, let's see what we can do. You can actually look at this not comments, like it's kind of a doc. It's come from the package Flutter widgets. So I feel that this one maybe it's even native. Maybe you don't even have to do the, let me see. Where is the method here? Yeah, you do. Yeah, so anyway, it probably come from here, okay, from that library. All right, so, but this is standard. Again, I told you, there are different ways to do the navigation. The one I'm showing you probably is not the best practice, because what this push does is actually to add that screen into a step so that you can always go back. Sometimes you need that kind of behavior, sometimes you don't, okay? So, but this is a quick thing you can find to make something work, okay? When you do this kind of a development learning, let's just make things work first, because that's where you can get your confidence to keep going. But if you start to dig into, I want to actually know completely how the navigator works. So what are the approach I have? What are the options? I bet, you know, you read the documentation, you just can't get it, okay? So that's not how it works. A lot of these things are very practical. You have to understand it by looking at what gives you, and then compare the behavior. The more experience you have, some of this concept become more meaningful, okay? So that's my recommended way to learn it. So, but again, a lot of these things I'm writing, it will not be best practices, but my point is your app get downloaded or not doesn't depend on how many best practices you use. It depends on that they solve the problem, that your app have a good UI or user experience, okay? MVP, prototype, that's more important than knowing all the best practices in the beginning. Obviously, if there are certain best practices, we'll actually, you know, try to follow that once you understand it, okay? Another thing I didn't mention is, if you look at the Flutter documentation, they will tell you, you could build an app with this kind of a stateful widget. You can also do the app with, the screen with a stylus widget. Again, there's a difference, but you know, for now, this sample always use stateful. Let's just use stateful for now. Okay, it's not going to give you anything wrong. Okay, and then you can start to try to play around with some of this. Let's try some other widget, right? So for example, I want to add a button, right? So you're going to Google Flutter button. All right. So let's take a look at and find out some of this document. You know, different time you probably find different things, but let's just go through, try to find the ones you might need, right? So it looks like this one here is a very simple button. Button bar, that's not what we want, right? So flat button, let's go here and then look at some of this. Oh, this is called a flag button. That's a different style. And let's just pick a very simple one, a flat button, okay? It looks like it has its on-press word. I understand what that is. There's a child for the text. Pretty good. So I'm going to copy this whole thing. Go back here. Let me just try to add it, see what happens. All right. So no errors means that we have the library. And then let's just change the text. Oh, it has a flat button. So let me reload. And there is a flat button. And you can see, looks like it's a kind of a more iOS type of style, right? No border background, but you can configure that, right? So, and then you can also try to, for example, go back to the first screen using the same approach. We do this. Let me close this one here. Oops. So I'm going to create this my home page. Again, you probably have to import it. And then my home page. All right, so let me run this again. So this one goes to, this button brings us the home page. This one brings us the next page, home page, the next page. But you know, the problem I think is if you go back, as you can see, the things are stacked there. That's not what you want. Okay, you don't want to have your second screen just have different copies. But don't ask me how to solve it right now. I guess it's something about this push, okay? So like this one here. That's what happened. When you push, you're basically pushing on the screens there. Some of the behavior you need this, sometimes you don't, okay? So, but that's okay. You know, now you can at least navigate. You can start to prototype your things really quickly. You know, after we learn how to do the layout and widget stuff, you should be able to build your UI really quickly without, you know, all the functions there. So the app development is really not difficult. Okay, the reason I want to go through this process is I want to tell you that getting this little template and modify it on top of it is the best way for you to learn and then get your things done. Okay, later on you will understand all the technical details and also the best practices. All right, that's what I want to share today. Any questions? All right, start to go to try it. Okay, once you get the idea, you need to start to plan your UI. How many screens? What do those screens look like? What are the buttons? You know, draw it on a piece of paper, and then you can start to build those screen by screen. Okay. All right.